Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you may be watching this. I am Jamie Moeller, and this is the Grad Connection, where my goal is to try to help graduate students do more than just survive. I want to see you thrive. So we just kind of exited or came out of a teaching assistant series that I focused on, and I'd kind of posted that I was thinking about doing a research series ideas kind of thing. Um, and so there seemed to be a lot of traction around that, or people interested in that. And so just spent a little while kind of jotting down, just doing a brain dump, and I thought I wasn't sure how many ideas I would have. And today, I don't know that I'm going to bring a particular piece of content, but I just would like to provide a little bit of background of one, kind of where I'm coming from on these topics, and then second, just kind of give you the list of topics that I jotted down. That's not to say that it's going to be exhaustive. I may end up adding more to it. If I end up, as I start laying out these various topics, if I feel like that I have more to say than I can fit in 10 to 15 minutes, then I will probably kind of expand this. So we'll see. I actually ended up with quite a long list. I guess it shouldn't be surprising. For about 10 years, I taught a research methods course, which was an evening graduate research course. And like a lot of graduate courses, it was a 3-hour course. And these are the kinds of courses that really test the endurance of not only the students, but also myself as a faculty member. But one of the main things that I focused on in that course was one, providing an overview of research methods, and a very broad overview. The college that I come from used to be called the College of Technology, now called the Polytechnic Institute. There's just a whole very wide swath of types of research. It's not just one particular type. And then I would go on to say that since I've had the opportunity to work in the graduate school at my university, at Purdue University, I've really kind of broadened my sense of kind of things that go on in the life sciences or bench sciences or field studies and those kinds of things. So I'm going to try to bring a lot of that to bear, and I don't know how much of this might be relevant to you as a listener, but I would hope that you can take away in each one of these clips at least one or two nuggets that may be relevant to you. Now, I will be honest and say a couple things. First of all, this is going to be very focused on kind of my Purdue-centric vantage. I can't bring any other vantage because I haven't been anywhere else. So it's going to be very Purdue-centric or research intensive, comprehensive institutions. But I would hope, regardless of what size institution you're in, whether it's a Big Ten institution or a small private, or even some other kind of institute, liberal arts institution, whatever, I would hope that some of this would be relevant and might help you. So that's kind of a little bit of the preamble. Let me kind of go through the topics, and I'll give at least an overview. I think of kind of what I'm thinking right now. So maybe you'll be able to take some takeaways. And I would say, if one of these topics tickles your fancy, I did put it kind of in order of almost kind of how I would teach it when I did my research methods course. But if you have questions about any of these topics, and even before I get to them, certainly I'm more than willing to have a conversation either on Zoom or via email on any of these topics. So let me just kind of run to give you the lowdown of things that I'm thinking, topics that I'm thinking. So first of all, I just want to do an overview of research, just to kind of set some framing, really to try to set some common language, or at least the language that I use when I talk about research and graduate education. I want to talk about the kind of the different types of research that exist, as well as different types of degrees. Because there's a whole smattering, right? When you talk about the difference between professional degrees and research degrees, what are the differences and those kinds of things. I want to spend one session talking about graduating on time. This is actually a professional development workshop that I provide to our students. And I'm a big believer that graduate students oftentimes don't graduate because they don't plan to graduate on time, meaning you need to create a plan. Depending upon your major professor, to do that is kind of a dangerous thing because it's kind of a conflict of interest, and sometimes, they may not be the best at helping you navigate that, and so you kind of have to take your life into your own hands. And so I'm going to give some suggestions about how to do that. I want to talk about the proposal, the qualifying exam, the preliminary exam, the exam process as a whole. Now, obviously, this is going to vary a little bit as you go from institution to institution, but there's probably going to be some commonality. And I'll say even within Purdue, there's a tremendous amount of variability from one unit to the other. And at Purdue, the graduate school allows each unit to kind of decide this. So key is just knowing, I think regardless of what kind of exam process your institution might use, hopefully you find some of these suggestions useful. Talking about types of theses and dissertations, right? So there they're predominantly like this, two main types, I think. One is what I call a monolithic dissertation, and the other is what I call an article-based dissertation, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about alternatives to the theses and dissertations. Because there are a lot of, I mean, maybe you're in a film studies program, and maybe the main output is not a dissertation or a thesis. Maybe it's actually a visual work of some type. Maybe it's a musical score, a musical composition. Maybe it's some kind of performance. I want to kind of, even though, and I will say I'm a musician. I sing, I play piano and guitar, that kind of stuff. I don't have a degree in music, but I kind of come from an arts background. And so I think I can talk to that to some degree. So talking about alternatives to a thesis and dissertation. Then we kind of get into the topic of, kind of, if you're not in a research program, I don't know how valuable this would be to you. But I want to talk about, how do you develop the research proposal? What's it look like? Page counts, that kind of stuff. What's that? Developing a research question. Then developing hypotheses. And then scope, significance, and broader impacts kinds of things. Dealing with assumptions, limitations, delimitations. What the crap is a literature review, and what should be in it, and how do you go about developing, either a literature review or prior work section. Talk a little bit about methodology. Why is it important to talk about it? What are the most important parts, particularly as you start to document it? And so pretty much all those things I just mentioned are what I would consider part of a thesis proposal or a dissertation proposal. And again, this comes from my framework, the research methods course that I taught. The whole point, the biggest project that all the students did was the creation of, or the refining of, their thesis or dissertation proposal, so that, hopefully the course would lead them to the point where, right after, at the end of that semester, which a lot of them did, or even the semester immediately after, they could do their proposal defense. So then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into talking about qualitative and quantitative approaches to research. So qualitative being human-oriented, this idea of, doing studies like biography, ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, case study, and the list goes on, of things that you might find in like education or the humanities or social sciences. The other quantitative would be more on the side of doing human measurements, or doing experiments that basically have a pre-test, an intervention, and post-test of some sort. Quantitative approaches may also include other things, and so I want to do a secondary kind of talk on, other types of quantitative research, like bench research, field. And when I say bench, like, working in a research lab, doing bench research, where you're actually using beakers and anything scientific equipment. Talking about field research and other kinds of things that might come up. So that's a whole nother genre of research. And then another area that I oftentimes talk about is this thing that I call things and stuff research, which is essentially where individuals work with the creation of software or hardware or algorithms or physical things or physical stuff that you're creating, building, that kind of thing. And essentially the research is all about creating that thing and then testing it under certain conditions to see if it meets certain parameters, whether it succeeds or fails, at a very coarse level. So these are all kind of topics, and then, not to say that I'm done yet, there are a couple of ancillary things that I think are important to talk about. Talking about copyrights. How do you deal with copyrights as you work in your research and other kinds of things? Data management kinds of concerns, whether that be tangible data or whether that be intangible data, like images and sounds and text and all those kinds of things, numbers. Talk a little bit about developing the results sections in papers. I think it's important to talk a little bit about an approach to, or at least a couple different approaches to, how do you do summary, conclusion, and results, which is typically a chapter 5, or the last chapter in a dissertation or thesis. And then I want to also talk about issues that are specific to article-based dissertations, and article-based theses. So at least right now, this is the range of topics when I sat here and just kind of went from the top of my head, things that I would talk about in a research methods course. And I'm sure there are other things that are, even as I've talked through this list, a couple other ideas came to mind of things that I could, touch on. So we'll just see how this goes. And enough people have expressed interest in this. I think it goes without saying this is probably right time, right place for this. You may be, right now we're in about, at Purdue right now, we're in about week 4 or 5 or 6. I don't know. It all blurs together once the semester started, quite honestly. But we're, getting into the end of September and getting into the beginning of October. So a lot of times students are, busy writing. So we've kind of gotten over the hump of teaching and talking about grading and all that kind of wonderful stuff. But now oftentimes mid-semester we turn our attention to creating proposals because, not long before the end of the semester, students are going to be defending proposals, they're going to be doing qualifiers, they're going to be doing prelim exams, they're going to be doing final exams. And so a lot of times in this mid-semester, mid-portion of the semester, this is, where time and attention is turned towards basically the writing of research proposals and final documents. So all that said, of just trying to give you a framework for what's coming on the channel. I know there are a lot of people that have joined both in the Facebook private group as well as subscribed to YouTube. And the last couple of weeks I've been doing workshops around Purdue, and it seems like people are actually starting to pass around the fact that this place exists. So if you're new here, welcome. Drop me a line if you have any questions, if I can help you. Again, the whole point of this is kind of twofold. One is to kind of provide you information that you might not get elsewhere. Maybe some of this you get somewhere else, and that's great if you've already had some of this. But get you some of this information and try to help and try to take my experience as a faculty member for 25 years and try to maybe make your graduate experience a little bit better. And then the other part of it is just to kind of give a sense of community, just to know that you're not alone. Because I know a lot of times as a graduate student, it can feel that way, particularly as you get into your research. It's a kind of a lonely experience because you're kind of past classes and you're doing research. So with that, I think I'll close this video down. Again, I just want to say thank you for subscribing and thank you for commenting, for those who comment, those who interact on the private Facebook group. I think this is what started as a small adventure starting to take off a little bit. I mean, it's not gone viral by any stretch of the imagination, but nevertheless, we're making a little bit of progress. Now, one of the things I've thought about doing, as wild as it might sound, I think TikTok is a new platform that might have some benefits of providing some of this content there. So if I end up going that route, I do consume content on TikTok, but I have not actually been creating any content yet. So we'll see how that goes. I'm kind of trying to figure out how I might use that platform in an additional way. So with that, let me say I hope you have a great weekend. I know I'm getting this video out a little later than normal, but it's been one of those weeks, probably not only for me, but for you as well. So hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.